Hey, Richard Matthews here again, and in this video we're going to be talking about the 7 stages of empire. So in the last video we talked about 140 years of monetary history in the US and sort of what's led us to where we are now. And in this video we're going to talk about how those last 140 years really mirror the 7 stages of empire that every major economy throughout history has gone through, and sort of where we are right now in those stages. So if you're looking to protect your assets and protect your purchasing power or your wealth, you can sort of see what's happened in the past and what's happening now and make your own decisions regarding what you want to do with your finances. So without further ado, here's the video. Let's talk about the 7 stages of empire and why we're entering stage 7 now and what that means to you financially. This is adapted from Mike Maloney's very cool video series called The Hidden Secrets of Money. This is from his second video in that series. And basically I've just adapted it for the slides here so you guys could learn this cool concept, which is basically saying that there's going to be a new monetary system and it's probably going to happen this decade, probably, right? We don't have a crystal ball, can't tell you it's going to happen this decade, but as far as history repeating itself, it's probably going to be this decade. There's going to be a huge deflationary crash and people will lose faith in currencies. And the good news is that people will go back to gold and silver as they have every single time fiat currencies have collapsed over the last 5,000 years of history. So important concept on this is that wealth is not destroyed. It is merely created and transferred. This is that whole abundance mentality we're talking about. It's not like the wealth of the world is this pie and, when the currency collapses, some nuclear bomb's gonna hit the pie and it's all gonna be gone, right? Wealth is not destroyed. It is merely transferred, and it's going to transfer back to the gold and silver and other commodities. So crisis generally equals opportunity. I can't remember, Fabian, you said something. One of the guys says, the best time to buy is when there's blood in the streets. Who is that?
Yeah, that was Baron the Rothschild.
Baron the Rothschild, right? So crisis generally equals opportunity. I love this picture. It's the dollar flaming plane,
literally going down in flames.
Yeah, I thought it was a funny picture. Anyways, that means that for every crisis, including the impending collapse of the US dollar, there is opportunity to be had, right? If you can educate yourself about monetary history, which is what you're doing here, which is fantastic, you can position yourself for great opportunity. And the nice thing is monetary history repeats and repeats all the way through civilization, which means that we can learn to see the patterns and prepare ourselves for what's happening right now with our currency. So let's go back and start with the beginnings of monetary history. I told you 5,000 years ago, the Egyptians used gold and silver for a medium of exchange, but 680 to 630 BC is when gold actually became money because it was made into coins, and then it became fungible, and it became divisible, and it became portable, and it became actual money the way we define it today, right? And it exploded in use in Athens because they had a free market. They had money, they had a working tax system, and they had free commerce, which allowed them basically to rise to the pinnacle of civilization. And now 2,500 years later, we are still in awe of the things that they accomplished. And a lot of our modern governments and a lot of our modern thought process on economics came from what these guys did and pioneered and innovated 2,500 years ago. I can't remember the name of this building, but that building was built, during a brief lapse in the Peloponnesian War, and it's still standing 2,500 years later, which is pretty cool.
I believe that is the Acropolis, and I've actually been there. It's pretty awesome.
Yeah, so it's pretty cool to be standing in front of something that's been up for 2,500 years, huh?
Yeah, but unfortunately, I don't think the Greek government's going to own it much longer. They have to fire sale it to make up for bad economic decisions.
Make up for their yeah, that's sad. So basically, what went wrong with their currency? Because Athens collapsed. And basically, the same pattern always happens in civilizations. They basically began debasing their currency to pay for war, in this case, a Peloponnesian War with the Spartans. And they began deficit spending. So they were debasing their currency at the same time that they were building cool things like that building. They built that during the war to continue to pay for great public works. Right. So the debased coins, which were copper coins, were taken at face value at first. And then people started keeping the gold coins, something they call Greshams law, where bad money pushes out good money, because if you notice something's more valuable, you're going to keep it. That's why the silver dimes are no longer used in circulation, because everyone keeps them. They realize there's actual value there. And they keep the cheap dimes in circulation, or in Athens' case, they keep the copper coins in circulation. All the gold ones come out. Right. So that's what they did. They debased their currency. They continued to pay for deficit spending. And then all of the real money comes out of the economy, and they're left with just the bad money, or in this case, the currency. So which bad money and currency, I mean, you could use those as synonyms, right?
Exactly.
So the seven stages of empire is basically, it's a societal pendulum that swings from quality money to quantity currency and then back again to quality money, right? So this is the way it works. Stage one is a country starts out with good money, right? In Athens' case, it was the gold coins, which is either gold or silver, or it's backed by gold and silver, like our gold certificates that we had in the United States when we started, right? Then you have free markets, you have free people, you have sound money, their economy grows, good things happen, and a country starts to develop economically and socially. It begins to take on more economic burdens, adding layer upon layer of public works. And public works things today like Medicare, Social Security, food stamps, welfare, Medicaid, national parks, and monuments. Those are all public works things that the government pays for. In our country, by the 1960s, Johnson's Great Society was being realized, right? With Medicare and Medicaid, Americans could, for the first time, earn a living from their government, right? That's what public work means. So that's stage two. Stage three is as its economic affluence grows, so does its political influence, and it begins to expand or increase its expenditures to fund a massive military. So I just wanted to put up some stats I found on how much we put towards our military versus some other countries. So the top 5 countries in the world, 1 in every 200 people in the military is in the military in US and Russia, versus 1 in 400 in UK and 1 in 1,000 for China and India. So those are the top 5 countries. And you can see the US and Russia, we put a lot of expenditures into the military, right?
Yeah, not only that, Richard, I believe America puts more money towards their military, I think, in the top 10 or 15 countries in the world.
Absolutely. So this is just a number of people, but you could also go amount of money, and you could see America spends way more money. I just thought it was interesting to see the number of people per capita in the military. So stage 4 is eventually the country puts its military to use, and it explodes its expenditures. So you can see the chart on the right. Our percentage of GDP going to the military before World War I was about 1 to 2%. During World War I, it was 22%. Between the wars, it was 2 to 3%. During World War II, it was 41%. So we were spending 41% of our money on the military in World War II. And then it's been 3 to 5% ever since, with some peaks in 1980s and in the early 2000s. So that's, we've done that. We've put our military to use, exploded expenditures. And then stage 5 is generally in order to fund the war and the wars, in order to have those massive explosions in how much we're spending on the military, the country steals the wealth of its people by debasing their coinage with bad metals, which is what they did in Athens. They put copper in instead of gold, or by replacing their money with currencies that they can print in unlimited quantities, right? Hopefully you guys have seen this already. You see this happening. We've been printing our currency, quantitative easing, bailouts, stimulus packages for years now. But during the U.S. participation in World War I, President Wilson banned gold export, thereby suspending the gold standard for foreign exchange. And then in 1933, Roosevelt started the Gold Reserve Act and suspended gold standard except for foreign exchange, revoked gold as universal legal tender for debts, and banned private ownership of the significant amounts of gold coin, and set the gold at $35 an ounce. And the U.S. started printing more dollars than they had gold. And then in 1971, Nixon cut the cord on gold, and the U.S. could now print dollars freely, which is what they were already doing. You want to say anything on those couple of events here? For
yeah, I
stage
certainly
5?
want to say something about the 1933 FDR. This idea that he confiscated gold, not really accurate. He actually bought the gold back, and then basically was one of the biggest thefts in U.S. history, because he bought it at a certain price, and then shortly thereafter raised the price. I think doubled the price of gold. But what's important to note is that, people that have called, going, some of these like gold dealers that advertise on TV, they try to sell you a gold coin from a pirate ship, claiming that anything prior to that date cannot be confiscated. The truth is only about 20% of Americans were foolish enough to turn their gold over or to sell their gold back to the government. Most people kept their gold, they just hid it, and the government wasn't able to. It's not like they went door to door to knock down your door to check if there was gold in your house.
Yeah. So found this wonderful quote by Jerry Robinson of FTM Daily. He says, as all other fiat empires before it, Washington had come to view gold as a constraint to their colossal spending urges. A gold standard, as provided by the Bretton Woods system, meant that America had to attempt to publicly demonstrate fiscal restraint by maintaining a holistic economic balance. And in 1971, the U.S. Federal Reserve, America's central bank, had finally freed itself from the constraint of the gold standard, and now the U.S. dollar could be printed at will without the fear of having enough gold reserves to back up the new currency production. Because who would want to live in a country that was fiscally responsible? I mean, that'd be terrible. So that's stage 5, right? You start printing your currency and debasing its value. Stage 6 is the loss of purchasing power of the expanded currency supply is sensed by the population and in the financial markets, triggering a loss of faith in the currency, right? So this happens every time fiat currencies come into existence. In our case, our fiat currency is global. So the population and the financial markets are the whole world that are triggering a loss in faith of the dollar. So after 1971, the petrodollar system was established in order to bolster global demand for dollars. We'll talk a little bit more about this in a minute. But after you cut the cord for gold, in order to keep demand up for gold, so people would still have it and we wouldn't collapse the dollar, the petrodollar was established. So we'll talk a little bit more of that in a minute when we get to the petrodollar. But anyways, as Washington continues to spend frivolously to rack up debts, other nations are starting to stop trading for oil using dollars today, right? That's where we're seeing right now is that loss of faith, is that there's bilateral trade agreements going on. There's lots of stuff that is showing that people around the world, countries around the world, no longer have faith in our dollar. So we are very firmly planted in stage 6 in the US right now. Hopefully that you see that at this point. Stage 7 is what's next. This is where we're going. And generally, there is a mass movement out of currency and into precious metals. This, again, happens every single time a currency collapses throughout history. And other tangible assets, right? So the currency collapses and gold and silver rise in price to account for the amount of quantity of currency that was created. So just like the currency supply and GDP have to match, gold and currency supplies match, right? So right now, our gold does not match the amount of currency supply, and eventually gold and silver and other precious metals and commodities are going to rise in price to account for the currency that's been created. So this process generally transfers massive wealth to those who had the foresight to position themselves beforehand in real money, which in this case is gold and silver. So Mike Maloney says we're in stage 6 and beginning 7th stage. Gold started accounting of currency printing in 2001 when it was $250 an ounce, and today it's what, $1,300 an ounce, Fabian?
I think it's back down to about 1,025. I know it's gone down. We're going to talk about why it's gone down here in a little bit. I want to just say, Richard, on stage 6 regarding really the petrodollar. Petrodollar basically came into existence after we came entirely off the gold standard in 1971. And all oil is sold basically or I should say Saudi Arabia, which is the largest exporter of oil, sells their oil in dollars. Now, interesting to note is that is beginning to change as other OPEC countries are now selling in other currencies. And you have OPEC having real big fractures. So the gist of it is that the petrodollar allows all this demand for the U.S. dollar, continued all this demand for the U.S. dollar. The bilateral trade agreements reduce that demand for the U.S. dollar globally. When the petrodollar finally ceases to exist, that'll be even less demand for the dollar, meaning that the Fed will have to basically either buy it back or they'll have to print more of it to basically make up more to make up for that loss of demand, which really is when you get into a loss of confidence. Yeah, hyperinflation, which my definition for hyperinflation is really a loss of confidence in the monetary system.
Yeah. So we're going to talk a little bit more about the petrodollar here in just a minute, because that's an exciting, interesting part of history too. So if you want to be on the right side of the wealth transfer that's going to take place when the petrodollar and the dollar as a reserve currency of the world collapses, you need to have a portion of your wealth stored in gold. So if all of your savings, investments, assets, or wealth is held in dollars, then you are probably in trouble right now.
Okay, so I know that could be a scary thought if you currently have all of your assets or your wealth tied up into dollars or in dollar-denominated assets. And in a couple of videos, I'm going to tell you what I'm doing about that in my own life so I can get some of my assets into something other than dollars. And I've already showed you I'm investing in gold currently, or I'm changing some of my dollars into gold. We'll talk a little bit more about that in the real money video. But in the next video, we're actually going to talk about how currency is currently created, how our system works. Because I think having an understanding of how our current system works will really give you a better idea of what's going on and what maybe you should do about it. So I'll see you on the next video.